We're live now?
Yeah, welcome everyone. My name is Stella Nordahl. I'm one of the co-creators of Emprogage. And together with me here today we have Michael Sillion, also known as Captain Future. You have prepared a presentation for us on the bigger endeavor that we're all on. You call it How to Navigate an Event-Driven Learning Society and Understand Collective Value Creation.
Yeah.
So you're going to take us on a smaller trip as a teaser for the big endeavor we're all on.
Yeah, how to live on spaceship Earth.
Yeah, we can also call it life.
Life, yeah.
Life. So, Michael,
Yeah?
Please help us out here. We have 1.5 hours together.
Yeah.
And we also open for questions.
There will be questions for you here in the audience, and people at home, you can ask yourself. It will be short question interruptions, around 1 or 2 minutes. So.
And very welcome, everyone.
Yeah.
From all over the world.
From all over the world. So, welcome. I'm Michael Sillion, Captain Future. And I will explain a model I've been working on for 3 years. So where am I? I am Captain Future. I've been on a 10-year journey of not having a day job. In this journey, I started asking myself, why can't we solve our global problems? Why aren't we having the better future? We know what to do. The same questions like Greta and many others. We know the science. We have the tools. We have the resources. Why isn't it happening? And it comes down to one thing that I will sum up in one word: narrative. Narrative is a large amount of facts, things. I will explain that as we go. But I call myself Captain Future as a crew member of Spaceship Earth. And this is our spaceship. It goes around the sun 1 year at a time. And it's our home planet. It's our only home. And we have to start taking care of it. And that's part of how do we do that? How do we explain what we do and how we do it? So I'm going to teach you what we call navigating. How do we navigate? It's everywhere for the last, let's say, 7 years. Me and my friends have heard talks, podcasts, lectures and things, and suddenly someone says, how do you navigate that? And if there is an activity called navigating, there must be an agent navigating as well. So that's part of what is future navigation. That is an agent who navigates into the future. So we're going to talk about maps. I'll call them, they can be called models or maps. This is an old map of Scandinavia where there are actually sea monsters in the sea. And there's a myth around that hiccups, here be dragons. It's actually never mentioned on any map, but it becomes a story in itself. And that's fantastic, because we live in Storyland. Even if there isn't a map where that says, here be dragons, today there is a story around that there were lots of maps where it said, here be dragons. And that's typical of our society today. We have lots of stories and narratives of things that had happened and haven't had happened, but still there are stories in our minds. So the question is, I will start this, what is a society? What is human society? And you can talk to yourself, or you can ask, if you have an idea or suggestion to me. So let's, is this mic on? Anyone have an idea what a society is, or do you need to talk about yourself first?
Maybe it's a coexistence of a group of people around a common set of values, culture, history, choices from the past that have given us who we think we are today.
Yeah, that is one answer. There's as many answers as there are humans, but as a human culture, we have to have like a common understanding what it is. Everyone can have an answer, but they have to match together in somehow. Anyone else?
Yeah, I can. I'm thinking of society as a community also.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, I say society is a way to do collective value creation. For a long, long time, we were animals, but then we started becoming humans, and we realized that everyone doesn't have to do everything for themselves. We can actually specialize and do things more efficient if we become very good at it, if we spend a lot of time for it. And so creating value comes hand in hand with a very long journey, perhaps several 100,000 years of specialization. Where someone became very good to making clothes, someone became very good at fishing fish. So they can fish more than more than two persons together. They can. So, and I also have a question that I've been asking myself for a very long time. Very similar to Daniel's question, is there enough? But my question is, who knows who does what and who helps everyone doing it? So we will come back to that question later. So what is future navigation? The big question of this speech. How do we navigate our way into the future if you use the term navigate? Anyone want to give a quick thought of what I think about what it could be? Stellan?
Yeah, I'm thinking of, could it be like both, I don't really know, but navigate for me, it's like there are hurdles. That could be one way of seeing it. Another one could be steering. That is more or less create. So both being aware of what is happening in the surrounding, we can call it the outer world, that is imposing things on me, but also my own ideas, often seen as the inner world, and connection of them. That for me is the future navigation. That is when inner and outer world are connected. And with intent for the future.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Eric?
Well, maybe future navigation is how do you find your way into the future for the goals that the society needs to have? We have the climate crisis right now. How do we navigate to actually reach those goals? That is the path into the future, so to say. So how do you find those checkpoints that you want to find in the future? You know you have to find them, but how do you find them?
Yeah, thank you. So for me, navigation is a set of very complex skills and activities that come together under the umbrella of navigation. Like it's part of exploring unknown waters, it's a part of exploring known waters, it's part of map making, it's part of making sense, and it's part of meaning making. So all of that I bring under the umbrella of future navigation. And actually, I'm going to show you a model that we have come up with, but like all models, everyone gets so in love with their own model, and you should kill your darling. So I made an actual poem about models that I think is very important every time you present a model, because I come across so many people that only can use their own model. Everyone else's models is not as good as this. Of course, my model is the best, but this is very humble to have this poem. It says, 3 models for the change makers in the West, 7 for the meta leaders in their hubs of co-creation, 9 for lost men stuck in old narratives, 1 for the wisest guru on his podcast pedestal, in the land of enlightenment where the light shine. 1 model to rule them all, 1 model to find them, and 1 model to bring them all, and in the YouTube video bind them. In the land of enlightenment where the light emerge. And you're going to go on this trip now, and I'm going to bind you in my model. And now we have 1 clicker there, and 1 on the screen. We have a big technical problems here, so we will stay with you.
You can continue.
Yeah. So I'm going to show you my model of learning. I have to have the slide up because I don't know where I am in my own navigation right now, so we're waiting for that.
So this is something about navigation is your maps need to be at least clear to you.
Yeah, clear to me, and we need to have several maps, and the maps can overlap, but just have 1 model and 1 map, not going to get us into the future.
Right.
Not was 1 method and 1.
Can you click the screen or something? Can you click the screen? The screen? As you did before?
Yes, no. It's stuck.
So this is very interesting about these maps interweaving, because it's almost like the same with us. Each of us has our own worldview.
Yeah.
So we have our own map,
Yeah.
in a way. And then we're overlapping each other's maps to create new ones.
Yeah. So my take here today is create a meta map on the whole the whole learning society and actually the whole learning universe. What is the meta map that you can have in your daily, when you see the news, when you go to an event, when you talk, have a meeting, to have a meta map in your mind that is very simple but very complex at the same time. So that's the work I've been doing. That's what I've been thinking of for 3 years. Can we have a simple map that can explain so much more to us how society works and the whole of the universe works as well? Yeah, so the model is of a learning universe. And I will take you to the beginning and see. I've seen other models. Actually, after I created my own, I found 2 other models of a learning universe, but they're only concentrating on a very small part of the cognitive part of being alive and being a living agent. So, but I want to connect it to all activities that goes around in society as well. So, as soon as we get the slide up, I will start going on the meta model. And then, under this model, we have an navigation action tools, a lot of actions tools that I will go into details on some of them. There are many, but not all of them. So we're connecting here now, finally.
I think we've got you right
Yeah.
here.
And we have my slide, yeah. So we navigate in an event-driven learning universe. From the beginning of time, the universe was just mostly hydrogen, then came helium, and then came heavier and heavier objects. But over time, there was no galaxies, no stars, no planets from the beginning. And I will argue that the universe learned to make them. Not in the essence that we see learning, but they weren't there from the beginning, and suddenly they showed up. They used the laws of physics and the natural laws to make it. But suddenly there were galaxies everywhere. And it wasn't like one galaxy just phoned up another galaxy. Hey, look what I just made. I made a galaxy. What's in my galaxy? Stars and planets. But it showed up everywhere in the universe, but they weren't there from the beginning. So I will argue that the first learning was the universe itself, learning to make the galaxies, the stars, and the planets. When the universe started, there was no iron. And we need iron for a planet like Earth to exist, because we need a magnetic field that protects us from the solar winds. Without iron, no Earth, no life. And the universe has to, over billions of years, learn to make enough iron and actually experiment, prototype with the lots of planets. So suddenly there was a planet where life was possible. And then we come to the next step of learning. That's evolution. We learned that life itself invented a way to give the next generation the experience, the failures, and the success of being a living agent to the next generation. And that propagated for millions of years, what we call evolution. It's very fascinating, and then learning was it speeded up. You don't have to. You learned a lot more in a much smaller time as life than the universe learned from the beginning of time. And then we came to the very, very exciting point where we humans, we invented a new way of learning. We can actually use communication, language, culture, stories, and narratives to propagate learning on a level never seen before by life. We can store it outside of us. We can give it to the next generation without DNA. Some animals actually teach their young what to do, mammals in particular, but not on the level that we have done it. So it didn't start with us. It started with mammals who could teach their young things that they weren't born with. But we took it to a whole new level, and that's what we call, over time we created a learning society. Now there's so much knowledge, so much information that would be unfathomable for people just living 1,000 years ago. They couldn't imagine the amount of books, YouTube videos, speeches, all the culture we have today. There's so much, and we create ever more every day. It's still an exponential growth in the amount of content we have on the internet. And what do we use all that for? And that's what I'm going to explore. So from the beginning of time, everything in the universe runs on energy. Without energy, nothing moves. So energy triggers events. So that's my framing of this. Energy can, by the natural laws, trigger an event. An event is when something changes. It can take place over a couple of million years. It can take place in a nanosecond. But for the rest of the presentation, we will assume that an event take place on a time scale that makes sense for us humans. Nanoseconds and millions of years doesn't make sense to us. But everything from events that I move my hand 1 second to I live my whole life, 80 years, that's a time scale we can connect to. Or even historians can connect to several thousand years. But to make sense of this, we use events that take place on a human time scale. Of course, but there are still things going on inside our technology today that take place on nanoseconds, but that doesn't make sense to us. We can't use that to navigate our lives. We can just accept that there are a few smart guys in the world that understands that time scale, but for most of us, that's not useful. And all events give rise to what we call patterns. We can see patterns repeating ourselves all over the universe, all over life, swimming, flight, running. Many animals invented this. So it's a system of patterns. And we humans, we have taken this to a whole new level as well. So everywhere we can see events reoccurring in cycles, in patterns. Maybe they change a little, maybe they adapt. But we call this patterns of events. And this gives rise to systems. And in a living world, we call them ecosystems. Because there's food chains, there's energy chains, there's movement chains, and everything. I won't go into detail of this, but the important part here, there is learning in the systems as well. You see what happened last year, and somehow we learn from it. And this created what we call artifacts. Planet is an artifact, a galaxy is an artifact, a rock is an artifact, a volcano is an artifact, an ocean is an artifact, on all scales. But we will concentrate on human scale, things that are not too small for us to see or not too large for us to fathom, like galaxies. Some people do, but most of us don't think about galaxies and atoms in our daily lives. So now I will apply this to human society, and I will add some things to this then. The most important thing is, of course, the living agents. We humans, we can create events as living agents that doesn't make sense if you watch it from space and use the thermodynamical laws. Why are animals moving around? Why are we humans climbing trees, driving in cars? It doesn't make sense if you would observe it from space and just have the physical laws in mind. They move random, but if you observe it, there's a lot of patterns as well. If you see people commuting to work, there's a lot of pattern, but the physical laws doesn't explain why one car goes from one place and then later in the day returns to another place. There's no like physical laws that says that they don't follow a tilting plane, nothing. They just move around. They still use energy and events, but living agents, we have another thing, and I will call that narrative. Narratives is all behavioral patterns, all systems that you can have inside a neural net, like a simple animal or a complex brain. But narratives we can also store in books, on the internet, all kinds of instructions that can make a living agent make an event. We call narratives. And for that to happen, we also have a weaker kind of energy that I will call signals. For as long as the universe has been around, there's been light, but light hasn't moved much yet. In some places, the solar wind can move objects like melt the things like comet, but that's a fringe example. Light doesn't move planets, but light gives rise to. If there is an observer, I can interpret that as a narrative. So if I see the sun come up in the morning, that gives me a signal in my brain that says time to go up, time to go out, and the light tells me that you can't. If you still observe it from space, you can't see why does suddenly all the living agents start walking when sunlight comes around. Does the sun move them around? No. The sunlight is not strong enough to move people, but the signal from the sunlight forms a narrative in our mind that makes us move around. This is what I've been working on. So this is any questions or any what are you thinking so far? Are you with me in this?
I'm going to ask you the question of why you put so much emphasis on living agents, because your voice went to some passion when you brought that out.
Yeah, because we humans are living agents. We're not planets. We're not moons circling. We're not the moon circling another planet. We move around and we do stuff. We will come back. What do we do with our daily lives? What do you do during a day? You do lots. You do hundreds of events, maybe 1,000 events. You think thousands of thoughts, of narratives that makes you do these things. Everything from moving your finger to sitting here, to speaking to me, eating lunch, to looking at me. All this is in your brain. And you're a living agent. A very fantastic invention of the universe. We can do all amazing things. We have made the tools that makes it possible for me to
Convey your thoughts.
convey your thoughts, yeah.
Even people who are not here presently at this time.
They can see this online right now because we human agents had invented the tools that would be impossible for the universe to foresee 1 million years ago. From our perspective. For 1 million years ago, the universe itself could not think about humans or life doing this on this planet that we do today. Of course, that's why I'm in love with living agents. Because if we understand that we have the agency to do whatever we want, we can change everything from day one. If we come together to understanding that we are living agents and we all have agency, and we can coordinate this agency in a way we didn't do yesterday. Tomorrow every human being on planet Earth can do something different tomorrow if we coordinate it. And we see that during catastrophe. Suddenly, your home is away, everything changes. You didn't do what you did yesterday. Your whole life is completely different when there's a flooding or an earthquake or something. Everything changed. But we don't need earthquakes for everyone to change their daily routines. We can actually use other ways to convey that.
I'm looking at this question from the fact that you're basically saying that human beings have more power.
We have
than
more
they realize.
agency than we
That's
can
what we
dream
mean
of.
by
Yeah,
power
yeah,
is
yeah.
agency,
Yeah.
right? Because if we don't redefine that word, it seems like something far off that only a few people have access to.
Only the people in the top can decide what
Right,
changes.
which is not the
I have
it's
to do
never
what
been
I
the
did
case.
yesterday. And that's not true. But from a living animal, most animals do what they did yesterday.
Right.
And we do that too because we're habitual. A large part of our narratives are habits and trained skills, things we've done our whole life. I don't have to think how to tie my shoes anymore. I do that habitual. It's a learned pattern, but still, I didn't know it from birth, so it's something I learned. So there's so many things that we do on habit and behavioral patterns, but we still have agency over them. I can just decide, today I'm not going to tie my shoes. Right. Even though I know how to do it. I will do something, a different knot. My whole life I've done the same knot, but today I'm going to do a different knot. But still I don't do it, because why should I? And this, of course, gives rise to a whole level of learning. Everything we do today, we learn from someone else, or what someone did before. And sometimes we experiment, many of us experiment and prototype, and we lost the screen again.
And then we make another choice.
Then we make another choice, yeah. People on the internet will still see my slide, yeah. So, and that gives rise to what we call ecosystems of learning networks of agents, artifacts, vessels, and arenas. I will come back to that later. Some call them hyper-agents and hyper-objects. But when you connect humans together and when you connect all the things we have in a city, all our tools, all our buildings, all our cars, all our road networks, electricity works, internet, they're called hyper-objects. And we connect them together, a whole new level of learning. The possibility of a whole new level arises, and we can see that during the last 10 years on the internet, so much has changed. The rise of complex networks of influences and people doing things we didn't do on the internet 10 years ago. We learned how to do that, and for the next decade to come, there will certainly become something new we do when we connect things together. And that's a very complex area, but I will go into it a little bit later. But I will focus on being an agent, having agency, and learning for now, because that is what I do. And we also give rise to, for most of the time, artifacts was physical. It was a tool in our hand, the clothes on our body, the glasses, the mic. But now we also have, that's what narrative artifacts, stories. When you read a book, of course, it's ink on paper, but for you, there's also a story, a narrative inside the book. But as a physical object, it's just black and white. But you can interpret it to what we call a narrative artifact. And you can use object instead of artifact, but I love the object has been used for so many things. I chose the word art. I don't know if it's the right word. If you know a better word than object than artifact, please tell me. But I think artifact is a better word than object. The object is used, especially when you go into IT and things like that. Object is used everywhere, so it's very confusing to use that for artifact is not used for so many things.
It's definitely a Buckminster Fuller association with that word.
Yeah.
A big one.
But the most important part, and I've been thinking of this for 3 years, but then beginning of this year we found Nate Hagens in his podcast, The Great Simplification. In his talk, he tells that everything in society today runs on energy. For most societies today, the match between energy used and BNP is 99.9%. If anything happens in society, it was energy that made it happen. Mm-hmm. But there is narrative and human agents that pull the levers for energy. For a car to move, soon we have self-driving cars, artifacts that drive themselves. But for most parts, we have living agents that pull a lever that makes energy do things. The simple part, of course, not pull a button or press our screen or whatever. But human agents are still creating the events that controls narrative artifacts. We're starting to see autonomous vehicles or drones that can fly for themselves. So there is also something very exciting happening in that. We're creating artifacts that doesn't use a living agent as an input for their event. But it all comes, this is the interesting part, the system, behavioral patterns of events, and the learning that I will focus on this. So keep that in mind. What do we have to play with as living agents on this planet? And we have a lot of different resources. I renamed everything to capital in most things here and grouped them in different groups. Some of them overlap and they're all connected. But if you ask any politician or leader today, they say there's only one capital in the world, and they say they would cover 99% of the screen, and everything else you can buy with that. But that's not true, I would argue. So the very big capital we have is, of course, energy, because we now know everything runs on energy. Nothing happens in society unless there's energy. There's a small part that can run on very, very little energy, like all the internet and things like that has certainly speeded up. But it turns out that all the things we do on the internet consumes energy in a server hall or an iPhone. So the mapping continues. Even if we do digital things on an iPhone, we don't move things physically, but it can still consume energy. So even things like that run on energy. And the big part, I would say, is the biosphere. Some people don't like that I call it biosphere capital, but I say the biosphere is what we have to play in. We live in this thin layer above a molten core, and outside is vacuum and dead space. Very thin layer, and in this layer we have the biosphere. That's where we live today, except for very few people who can stay in the space station up to a year, but they cannot live their whole life up there yet. And we bring part of the biosphere up there to make that possible, food and air and things like that. They don't grow their own food up there. Mm-hmm. And all the other things are things how we can organize what we have to play with. I love the word play here. We, of course, have our mineral capital. It's everything that's atoms and molecules on the planet. And some of that is organic matter, what I call biological capital. Most of biological capital is recycled through an ecosystem of food chains. So, but there are, of course, our plants figured out how to make biological capital out of air, water, and sunlight. So they're the producer of much of the biological capital, and then the rest of us just eat that and transform that into other biological capital in an ecosystem and a food chain system. We have what we call the structural capital, the artifacts we made. Everything from the clothes I wear to the buildings. When I say structural capital, people think building bridges, railroads, cars. Very few people think of clothes. But without clothes, we are almost nothing. Clothes do make the man, as naked people have little to no influence over society. A fantastic quote by Mark Twain, I guess it is.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So clothes are a very important artifact for us. And of course, then you can go down to, are a tattoo an artifact? I will go into that a little bit later when I talk about that. But there is like a thin layer of things that we don't think of artifacts, but that still affect our way how we express and move in the world. Then we have a part of what we call human capital. Today we call them skills, talents, all the things we've learned how to do and not do as human agents. And I have the thing that my friend Bertola, a colleague, has spent 17 years researching what he calls social capital, relationships. Very important, and nothing in our society happens without relationships or agreements, and that's what we call social capital. And we have the most important part here, because we are a narrative species. All our culture, all our stories, everything we created since we started painting cave paintings and made the first songs and more dance. We probably started dancing way before we could speak. So the first dance movements are cultural capital. But today we know through internet and computer has made an explosion of narrative capital. Have anyone here watched all the YouTube videos on YouTube? Or listened to all the podcasts? Not even close, right? But still it's out there, and we're producing even more every day. And that's a part of our cultural narrative capital. And how do we use that? How much of it is useful? And how do we take what's useful and use it? Do we have, I will call this narrative literacy. Have we people actually working with the complete narrative literacy of the human society? To take it all in and connect all the narrative we have been created since dawn of time. Is anyone actually, there's maybe some academics researching this, but there's no one in practical life today that has it as a full-time job, and we will come back to that. What is it to be a navigator who spends their whole day exploring narratives?
Of all the things that seem scarce to me and will become more scarce, it's attention capital.
Yeah.
Right? Because of everything you just said, right? Tomorrow, the overwhelm of YouTube videos that we could never see, or we have a list of books and movies we know we want to see, but we haven't got to yet. Right?
All of us has a list of podcasts, books we should read, TV series we should watch, and everyone. And if you ask someone, I have hundreds of files on my iPhone and computer of list of good books, good podcasts, good YouTube videos. I love collecting and sorting and organizing this. And of course, the documentary by Tristan Harris and many people are talking now that they have attention fatigue and everything. And we all have the term life puzzle. How do you make your time your day on a work day go together with everything you should do? If you have family, you have work, you have activities after work, and the typical like 9 to 5 life puzzle. And that is time and attention. Well, I can spend time doing that, but my mind can be somewhere else. I can do the dishes, but my mind is on a podcast. So I spend the time dishing, but I have the attention on the podcast.
Right.
And how do I manage all that? And how do I balance my budget of time and attention capital? Most of us have never been taught this. Most of us didn't grow up with a smartphone and internet. We have never been taught how to navigate your time and attention. And we can see there's all kinds of good and bad examples what happens when we don't have the knowledge or the tools to navigate all that. I'm one of those who has spent my full time on the internet for the last 10 years. I don't know the real day job. I spent my time on the internet and things like that, and just exploring what is it to do what no one else in society who has a day job, who has to focus on their life puzzle. But I had the luxury actually to do this full time. Yeah. Who? Stellan?
Yeah, I have more. Maybe not a question. It's more like when you say you spend your time on internet, it's like with human interaction on internet. So, if I understand it right.
Yeah, both. I'm a gamer. I play online games a lot. I prefer YouTube videos to podcasts now. So the last COVID years, I spent a lot of time just browsing YouTube videos, and that's how.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
And
that's the time.
but
of
then
course,
also-
a lot of Zoom calls. Zoom exploded during COVID, and even for me, who spent time online, maybe once or twice per week, I had a video call. But now several times per day. And then Clubhouse happened, where I met Daniel, and I did an experiment. How can I spend? I spent 107 hours 1 week in March 2021, 1.5 years ago, on Clubhouse. How much can I spend in a week just to see and how far I can stretch myself?
And for people who are watching Zoom, maybe they are familiar with Zoom, and then you're talking about the audio app.
Clubhouse is an audio app without. It's like Zoom or Teams without video.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's open. You can just jump into any conversation.
And there you met people from all around the
I
world
met
and
people
connecting
like
ideas.
connecting ideas, and now the hype is over. But the connection I made on Clubhouse made the world a smaller place.
Yes, and made Daniel come to Sweden,
Yeah.
or from all over, traveling transatlantic.
Yeah. So that's a lot of focus. And then of course, we have the thing that some people think is the most important thing, financial capital. How much will it cost to rebuild Ukraine? Will it cost money? Can we just send money there and the money will make buildings grow? No, we need energy, we need concrete, we need machinery, we need competent workers. We need a lot of the other things. Money is a narrative that will direct us, but money can't do anything without all the others.
There is one thing money can do
Yeah?
that the others cannot. There is one thing that money can do that the others cannot, which is speed up time.
Yeah? They can make us act as human. It can give us agency. So money will give us agency. Most people think that money is the only agency today. I won't do anything if you don't buy it from me or order it and pay me for it. But most people do things every day without you paying for it. There's a funny thing they call, in the US, who hate communists. They are one of the most prominent, what we call kitchen communists. So if you sit at dinner at home and you ask your son to pass you salt, you don't do a transaction and pay him for it. He does it for free. That's communism, kitchen communism. And you can't. I have a very funny conversation with people on Clubhouse about the American kitchen communists. They do a lot of things for free in a society that does nothing for free. They think, but they do most of their daily activities. They don't. It's not a transaction. But they're so stuck in their mind that I won't do anything unless you pay me. But still you do. So if we can get around that we need all the other things, and the things that's fucked up in the world today, we think that just if I have enough money, I can buy clean water, I can buy clean air, I can buy healthy food, but that's not the case anymore. And for most people, it never was. It doesn't matter how much money you have in Africa, there's no clean water in many places. You can buy the technology, but that has to come. You have to order that from someone else. Someone has to actually manufacture a thingy, an artifact that makes clean water. You can just not put money on the ground and it will magically appear. It's not magic. Someone has to have the capacity, the talent to make the thingy that makes clean water. And it has to be shipped there, and it has to use energy, and it has to use narrative, and someone has to spend their day job doing it, spend their time and things like that. And if you understand how all this is connected together, we can perhaps.
I actually have a question then, how those connect. Right now, UN is having a big meeting about biodiversity.
Yeah.
And how would this model look at such a topic or such a question? Or do you understand what I'm talking about?
They're probably here or here, but they're not here. They're probably on financial capital and say that we have animals that have to have a habitat so they stay around. but they don't understand that we begin by taking care of the biosphere. We have to have that mindset. We have to become, that's what it is, becoming a crew member of Spaceship Earth. We have been caretakers of the biosphere. That's our primary. When I wake up tomorrow, my primary objective is to be a caretaker of the biosphere. And I can also be like a facilitator of energy to do that. And then I can use all the other resources to do that. But they probably start there. How much is it going to cost to take care of animals? It doesn't matter if you don't understand that the primary resource we have to play with is the biosphere itself, where they live, already live today. And that's a mindset we have to. That's what I made this. I've been thinking this model for a very long time. How can I have a map and a mindset? Like I close my eyes when I hear someone, it's going to cost 400 million kronos to save the elephants. No, it's going to take all of this to save the elephants. And the most important part is the mindset agency. But we have to have the skills and the talents to understand. And the last part, from human capital, I've broken out scientific capital because I think that's extra important. For things, science is a fantastic invention. It goes contrary to all human biases to think and guess things, but to actually prove. And the scientific method is called to prove yourself wrong. If you can't prove yourself wrong, you're probably onto something. So but most other humans' activity doesn't go around proving yourself wrong on a daily basis. You just think, I can probably boil an egg. You don't say, I'm going to see how many times I can fuck up boiling an egg. To prove yourself wrong. And things like that. That's, of course, a silly example, but that's why I think scientific method and scientific capital is so important. And there's so many science going on today. And then it comes back to this part of the cultural narrative. Who have read every science report? Even in your own field? Or even if you're a small part of your own field? No one. Even if you're an expert in a field, you haven't read every science report in that field because you spend your time doing all the other things as well. And how do we, this is of course a theoretic model and map, but how do we make it useful? And we actually made this model before the other one. This is a model me and Bertola Bergstrand and Carl McFall made together. How do we make useful activities in society to understand it better? So we came up with this model, but nobody understood that, so I had to make the first model to explain what can we do? What can I do? What can we do as an organization, as a community, as a team, as a city? This is very useful on a city level, or a smaller. It's not so useful on a nation level. So I think in smaller communities, organizations, and cities and regions, this is very useful. On national level, it's not so useful, I guess. I don't know. This is things we have practiced and put together in a theoretical model that we actually started trying out just before COVID, but then there was no physical way to do it. So we have spent our time meditating on this and refining it. So it consists of 4 groups of activities. And this orange here, it's on this spiral galaxy, but you can see the orange one is on all the circles. Orange, orange, orange. So every activity connected to the 4 others. That's why we put it not on a 4 field or something. That's why we put it on a spiral galaxy. And Carl actually wanted to animate it so it moves in 3 dimensions and things like that. But but this is like complex enough. So I will go into each one of these and explains the tools and the maps you can use in each one of these to navigate a human society. So it's called eventification, journification, unification, and abilification. We actually invented some of the words just to make it novel. We could use other words. We still choose unification as a already existing word. because we didn't know what to come up with there. But we invented 3 words just to make it novel, to understand that this is something, this is a new way, a new map to see things. And I will start with eventification. Any questions so far, or any thoughts? Eventification is event navigation of our society, making every event an opportunity for weaving and learning. How do you make every meeting more magical, meaningful, and value-creating? How does the agent arena journey connect? So you all been to, if you take like a meeting or a conference, it's useful. Everything is event, like I said before. Me eating lunch is an event, but us being here, this lecture is an event. How do I make this event more magical, more useful for everyone? We all been to boring meetings or useless meetings. We've been to a conference where we didn't learn anything. I didn't connect to anyone. I just went there, sat half slept through a lecture, and then went home. I didn't even exchange contact with anyone because there was no one there to exchange contact. Like totally useless. But I've also been to magical events where I bonded with people for life. I went to a conference 10 years ago called Swedish Social Web Camp in Blekinge. And some of the people there, I've only met them once, but and a little time during that event. But I met someone on a train station like 5 years ago, 5, 6 years ago. And I said, hey, it's you, in a hug. Because we bonded during one single event that was so magical that we were friends for life. Not close friends, but still. And you know the difference, like a super boring, useless conference and a magical conference that brought you new insights, new friends, whatever. And how do we make every meeting, every event more magical? That's because we know how to do it. We think at least. So we experienced, Bertola called this impact journey or learning journey. So it's in essence, in just going to an event, you create a community of people that before the event plans it together, like you would go to a festival or something, and you start planning with your friends, what should we bring? Is it a camping event? Do we sleep in a hotel? Or is it just a one-day event? Should we go to a pre-party? And you start planning. But the most important part after an event is, like, of course, the after. How do we use all the things that we experienced, learned, and connected to after the event? I'm sure all of you have collected thousands or hundreds of business cards that you never followed up on. Because, and you got a new insight and you said, on Monday I'm going to go to work and start doing this. And you came to work and everyone else was, what is he talking about? And it just went away. But I learned the best things to do different, but there was no onboarding and process for that. And we have been experimenting. How do you make a journey before, during, and after an event? And we have a thing like that. And we also started prototyping with a thing we called Playground. So do you know what a hackathon is? Where you collect people. It originally was, you collect programmers together during a weekend, and they made a small program, or app, or something like a prototype, and then they showcased it, and someone won a prize for the best in show, and then everyone went back to work, and maybe if you were lucky, some of the people actually made a company or a product of this. And now, but then hackathon also, they called innovation jams, when it's not programmers, but it's ID people, and you bring an idea to life, and you brainstorm and you do things. And then after the event, all the energy goes away. So we think, what if you do it the other way around? What if you just bring people together during the event to bond them together, and then you start the work after the event? You don't program during the playground. You just have workshops, or you dance or drink or things like that, and you bond. And then you said, on Monday, we're going to start a company together doing what we discussed in this weekend instead. You don't program here, but you program after the event instead. So we started, Bertola has been experimenting this, and he has seen, he's a scientist, so he has observed people actually new collaboration coming from an event where people bonded and things like that. And I also have a whole blog post I won't share now, but there's a lot of science around engagement. How do we make, it started with people like Martin Seligman, he came up with the term PERMA 15 years ago. Daniel Pink came out with a book called Drive, where he discussed what is this that inner motivation that motivates people during an event. And that's very useful. I actually worked with some event students in my former hometown, Varberg, and they didn't know how to design an event for engagement. The behavioral psychology, behavioral science around how do you make an event magical. They didn't know about the science behind what makes an event good. Many of the people are administrators that think just as we have, it's the number of people that show up that matters. But as soon as they show up, it's a success. I still work with people like that. Yeah, it was a 100 people showed up. What? Was that how you measure the success of the event? Yeah, they paid tickets. It was a success. But what did they learn? Are they friends now? What are they going to do in a year's time? And I have no idea. The next part is journification, facilitation of the individual and collective lifelong learning journey. Sense-making for meaning, perspectives, insights, collective value creation, life paths, competencies, expert versus generalists, and things like that. Does anyone of you have a pathing agent? We can call them mentor or guru or role model like that. Yeah?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah?
Should we tell
Yeah.
a little bit about it? Okay, so yeah, I've realized quite early that even if I can mentor someone, I also need a mentor or a coach or someone who can help me sort things out, especially as I have a lot of ideas. So it has been, I would say for me, a personal success factor for having, sometimes it's like I can have someone and then that person can help me, maybe not at the same time, but later on in a new setup in life. That has been the case in at least 2 cases.
Yeah. So the thing is, most people don't have a pathing agent in birth. They have their parents, and for most of our history, you did what your parents did. That was your path in life. But now we have all kinds of social mobility, and we make up new types of talents and competencies and work. Because 50 years ago, there was not many people working with IT and internet or anything like that. But we made that up. So they didn't do what their parents did before them. But when you say lifelong learning to people, they just think about your education and work. What did you learn at university? And then you're set for life. You maybe pick up a few things on the way, but I still hear people, but what did you study 30 years ago? That's irrelevant now. Nothing what I studied 30 years ago makes sense to what the world we live in today. For me, at least. Some people, they have a career that still makes sense, but so much has changed that for many people, nothing what they studied in university makes sense today. But we still focus on that when we meet some people. What's your education? What's your background? No, I want to know where am I now and where am I going? What's my path? Not my background. What is my path? And that's what we call journification, your journey through life as an individual. But there are now 8 billion people on Earth since November this year. Officially 8 billion people. That's 8 billion paths. That's all connected. And does every one of these have a pathing strategy, a pathing agent for the journey for life? Some have several, some have methods or some. So we have this is my field. I'm very interested in it. I made a model myself that's called Ikigai 4.0. And I will go into it later. We also have started, during COVID now, we started experimenting with online wisdom gyms. And during those wisdom gyms, we came up with a very interesting exercise called Glassbit Games. That is collective sense-making and meaning-making thing. I will go into mention that very shortly. Yeah. And we also have a method. We went to Japan 2018 to take part in the World Shift conference, and there's a very simple model called World Shift that gives you a statement on a paper. Where am I and where am I going?
Is it right?
No. There we go. So World Shift is a method we can use for this. Inner development goals, just yesterday, they launched in May, and yesterday they launched part 2 of this called the Inner Development Toolbox. You can check that up online. There's some news, so I won't go into that, but there's a toolbox of scientifically proven methods that you can use to navigate your life. But things that very few people talk about is what I call pathing literacy, pathing dojos, pathing agents, and identities, something I've been experiencing with myself. And we also have the last part called campfire and flow states. Campfire mentality. Most people on Earth today, they change their behavior after dark. After dark, you don't work anymore, you go home and you do other things. You change your behavioral patterns. I will call that campfire mentality. And there is also, for our modern society today, are designed around day people. But I'm an extreme night people. As night goes longer, I go smarter. Most of this work I've done during night. And I've been trying to find out what it is. I call it campfire mentality, or keepers of the fire. If you think back to the early hunter-gatherer societies, we couldn't make fire, we can only copy fire. So someone has to keep the fire alive during the night. If the fire died, bad. Then we have to go find fire in the forest or another tribe with fire, because we couldn't make it our own. So way before we could speak, we had people that were keepers of the fire. Their job was to definitely never, ever fall asleep during night. Or the tribe would probably perish or die or suffer. So they're very hard focused. And this has been going on. We had fire for at least 130,000 years, I think, when they found the first. This is a cave in South Africa that goes back to this. We have, way before we could speak, we had fire. And this is so long, so it's probably evolutionary for people to be keepers of the fire. I can feel it in my bone. But when I started realizing this myself, it became a profound thing for me. And still we treat night people like shit if you don't work like in the artist industry or things like they do rock concert and things like on night, or you're a barkeeper and you're up during night serving people drinks and things like that. Then you're in the night industry. But for most intellectual work, you have to get up and be on a Zoom call 9 in the morning. Even if I do my most creative work around 3 and 6 a.m. And sleep till noon. And some people are day people, and we should celebrate that too. But we don't understand what it is to be a keeper of the fire. So it's also something I'm very passionate about as well. So. And flow state, I won't go into that. There is a whole research around flow state and how it makes us productive and things like that we even don't talk about today. How do we put people in flow on a daily basis? When they work, when they're with their kids, when they're with friends. The next thing is unification. Weaving together people, passions, places, ideas, communities, groups, organizations, institutions, stakeholders, and clusters in a multi-helix model. That's much of Bertola's work in science. How do we weave people together? Sammanfläta in Swedish, for Swedish listeners, not väva. Sammanfläta, or weaving together, is like, but the term weaver came up from Ashoka and the Weaver Academy. Before that, Bertola, we said networker or building social capital and things like that. But we think weaver is a good word. How do we weave everything together? Not just people, but everything. How do we, back to the question, who knows who does what and who helps everyone doing it? Who can see all the patterns in society and help, not do the work themselves, but help everyone else? See, you should talk to him, you should go there, you should call him, you should buy that thing from that place and instead of that place, and all that stuff. Who can help everyone do it? And there's, of course, a lot of things you can do around that. I will focus on one model that I will explain later called the future village. And Bertola has been talking bonding, bridging, linking for a long time. what is the difference with relationships? How do I bond with someone that's become close friends for life? But I can't agree that with everyone I meet. I'm not bonded with everyone in this room. I'm bonded with Stellan and a little bit with you and maybe a little bit with you, but I'm certainly not bonded with you. But we can still do work together, and that's what we call bridging. We can still exchange ideas, and we can have a contact on, I can send you a YouTube link and things like that. And you came here, it's part of the bridging. We're not friends, but we're bridging together. And then we have what Bertola call linking. When we have the relationship, but I have a lot more of, if you go back to the resource play, I have a lot more access to some of the resources than do you, and you need them. So why should I give you access to that? Why should we have a relationship? That's called linking. Because we need linking everywhere, because most people have more access to more resources, and they have to give them away. But who should they give them to? Who needs them the most? Who organizes that? And that's part of the linking strategy. It's just not the one with the most money can buy it, because then that have fucked up so many things. If the one with the most money buys the thing, or if upphandling, what's that in English? Procurement. There's when cities and states procure things, there's so many faults and treachery strategies to get the work. Not because you're the best for it, but because you had a right man who can link it. And then we have what I just started calling cluster literacy this week. And peopling is another very interesting model for how you interact with people. But it all comes back to all this. This is what society is built of. People and places connected together. And we don't talk about that, certainly not on a city level. Where is the center for that? Where is the center for that? On a state level, maybe it's a center in Stockholm or some other city for something, but we don't have a complete strategy for the whole niche or branch or cluster of if one thing, how they all connected together on a city level, nation level, or a global level. There are very few people who works with this on a global level. But we need that. If we're going to be a global species, we need millions of people working with connecting it all together as their day job, not just 10% of their day job, like it is today. And the last part, if we call enablification. How do you enable all that? The classical, of course, is how do you buy that? If I have enough money, I can just buy everything. But it turns out that's not true. IT companies today are screaming for talents. They can't buy them anymore. It doesn't matter how much salary they have. There's not enough to go around because there's not enough talent. We have to enable that in another way. That's just one example. So enabling for all kinds of collective and individual value creation. People, competences, places, ecosystems, habitats, narratives, cultures, resources, science, and behavioral patterns to make all the other activities possible, they're all free. That's it. That's what. And that's the thing Bertola is working for much about. He has a model working in Trondheim City called Learning Society, Listen, Link, and Learn. I will show that shortly later, but I won't go into that. We have the SDGs as one thing of enabling model for what we need to do. It's not complete enabling in the essence that it should be, but it's certainly something. I will show a charter. I have a new thing that's called the egregore, a very interesting concept from Evan McMullen, a friend of mine in the US, who came up. I will mention that lately. Where does all bad human behavior come from? That contradicts everything we want to do. He called us the egregore or the intersubjective parasite. It's a very deep philosophical conversation, but I will at least mention it. I call this narrative literacy, and we of course have the role of the weaver and the navigator. So I will start with this. It's a very interesting compass. Me and Stellan, we just came up to the name Future Village. What is that? And during a Glasspeak game session, it really came to me. This is what some people have to understand better. So it's a quick question. How much time do we have? I think I have in half an hour. Anyone want to answer? You haven't?
What is the future village? Well, it's something about dependency, I think, and it's also something about...
I want to know what it is for you.
For me?
Before I've told you my version, of course.
No, for me, it is something about dependency and about people need to negotiate to survive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've been living in tribes for a long time, and then we started. You want to talk? Yeah. You, of course, you want.
Question.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm answering as far as I can. I'm also again thinking of society and community.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when we're talking about a future, I would say take what is best of what we have done up until now, and then change what we need to change.
Yeah.
So, but again, I would say community.
Community, yeah. So the name refers to, we know what the past village is. Very few people are confused about what current village is. Is it the city, is it the nation, what is it? And even less of us think about what will a village be for me going forward. Of course, I live in a future village, but most people really don't. They do a little, but what will a village look in the future? So for a very long time, we lived in tribes, and then we started living in village. We started specializing. I can't make the clothes myself. I can't produce the food. I can't make my own for myself. Millions of things in my life I can't make for myself. I need a village. Or in this case, a global industrial complex. or at least, I depend on other people to make the things I need on a daily basis. And that's my village. And for most, in the past village, maybe 100 people up to 500 people, you know most of them, you know what they did, and every single one of them lived in the same village. If we were a village, we all lived in the same village. You knew, no one in your village lived in another village. We all lived in the same. We knew each other, we knew who did what, we could keep track on who didn't pull their weight, and we can celebrate the people who really pulled their weight. But today, most people, I have maybe 100 people in my village. I would say Daniel, you're starting to live in my village. Stella lives in my village. But the other 99% of my village people doesn't live in your village. They live in another village. It's all distributed across cities, nations, and the world. Because you're not Swede. But we still live in the same village. We're starting to live in there. But me and Stella live, and I have a very good friend in the US. He lives in I say he's part of my village, but most of his friends don't live in my village, and most of my friends don't live in his village. But so it's a new type of viewing. Who are the people close to me, who I'm dependent on? And there's a lot of people outside the village as well in a global industrial society. I depend on their products and services, but I don't know them. But somehow, their things, their products and services come into my village, so I can use them. And the things I do go outside my village as well. So it's very complex. It's all the relationships. It's my family, my blood family, and my extended family. Me and Bertola, of course, talk about digital village. Many people are upset. Why is this the last thing you use when you go to bed? And this is the first thing I take up in the morning when I wake up. The first thing I grab is not a glass of water. I even take this before I go to the loo. And some people are upset by this. It's stupid. We are all consumed by this. But this is my village. What is the first thing I need to do when I woke up in a cave? I had to make sure that everyone was all right. And there was no lion attack during the night. There was no hostile tribe. I wanted to know that the village is okay. It's instinctual. And most people don't get this. They think it's wrong. They think, no, I put my phone in the other room. No, put the village close to heart. This is my village. And I get very emotional because me and Bertola, we've been trying to live this full time, to understand and have this mindset and see how is this useful for me. Most of my ideas and thinking and models and everything comes from this, my village. I would die without this. I would suffer. This is, so I have the backup phones because I couldn't be out my village. I would die because we know that instinctively. Without the village, without the tribe, we die. This is why this is so important. This is the most important thing in my life. This is my village. Of course, Stella and I are in person now, but most of the year I live in Halmstad. He lives in Lomma. I don't see him face to face. I see him from my digital village. And as soon as we understand the usefulness and the impact of this, we can start navigating and using it for good. Most people use this for watching TikTok for people who are not in the village and things like that. But I use it mostly just to connect, talk to my people in my village. And that's how we organize value creation. Especially, so many of us work in a service industry, in an industry where much of the work is intellectual. So I don't need to ship products to Stellan for us to work together. We can actually just use devices like this or a computer to do actual value creating work together. Yeah?
Yeah, I have a small reflection on that.
Yeah, please do, please do.
So I have a reflection on this. You mentioned keeping the phone close to you when you sleep, and it's the first thing that you grab when you wake up. I try not to do that because my experience is that as soon as I grab this device in the morning, my sort of inner world, my inner work, my inner development, if you will, declines and is being replaced by the other stuff.
Yeah.
And
Attention. You have to,
yeah,
you don't know how to.
exactly. I lose attention.
You
capital.
lose one attention to put it somewhere else.
Yeah, and I want to keep that area clean for the attention to my inner processes. And I think in the morning it's a good thing to do that. It can be done whenever. But you also said something very interesting there about, I guess, letting things, people, happenings outside of your village come to you through this.
Yeah.
And that is something I need to reflect on and meditate on, actually. Because it might be that I let too much stuff from outside my village come in through this.
Yeah.
And
You don't reflect on what you have. You don't have the map to navigate everything that flows to you.
No, I don't.
No?
I guess. And I need to start thinking about who and what is in my village.
Yeah.
And to let those things.
There is all kinds of strategies. You can have favorite people that shows up more often on your favorite social media.
Yeah, of course.
You can have you can just go in. You don't have to use Facebook, LinkedIn. You can just go into Messenger or send good morning to someone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And things like that.
Yeah. And
To keep the bond alive.
And don't dig into the more open platforms, so to speak. Right. Yeah. Good one. Yeah. Thanks.
So this is the complex part. I won't go into that, but there's of course, how does all the agents, arenas, events, and artifacts and vessels connect into what we call hyperobjects and hyperagents? It's called all our institutions, also network society. This is a whole series in itself. I just want to mention that we have to start thinking about this on a global level, on a national level, or in our village. How do we navigate all this? This is something I will look forward to explore more during this decade. We had global trade networks for thousands of years, but and today we can see it's very complex. When a ship in the Suez Canal tilts, everything in the world stops and things like that. But it's not when you say global network, most people think about ships and roads and railroads and energies. They don't think about learning networks or cultural networks or human networks. But we have to put that in the mix as well, and we have to have more people working with that. So I won't go into that, but I will mention this. This is my favorite part. This is what I've been playing with. My hair, my clothes style. I started wearing this hairstyle in 1999, way before I became the navigator in 2012. But there was something there. I was very interested in identities and roles back then. And some people are very interested in this. They actually make their profession. They play theater or actors and things like that. Or they're the crew around that world. They don't do it themselves, but they support. They enable. You're a stage technician or a movie maker or a sound technician and things like that. But you're in that world where you play with identities and roles. But for most of us, we have these identities and roles. We are a parent, we are a sibling, we are a friend. But when you say this to people, all you think about is your work title. Most people, some people I was actually moving around from that, but most people think, well, what do you do? The first thing is your work title. I'm a good friend. What do you do? I'm a friend. Not the first thing that you pop up on a conference. I'm just a friend. What? What do you work with? I'm just a friend. You can, like, really...
Yeah, but how do you pay the bill?
Being a friend. My friends pay my bill.
Pretty good job.
It's a really good job. But you know what I'm getting with this. I've been playing with identities, roles, and expression of that. And that's why I came up with the 2015 role of Captain Future. It's not a gimmick. It's not a role. I don't put on my Captain Future clothes and start playing Captain Future. My quest was, how do I become Captain Future? Around the clock. You can call me in the middle of the night, sitting naked. I sleep naked, sitting naked in my bed, and I'm still Captain Future. I will pick up the phone and answer the question like Captain Future. So how do I become? That has been my quest.
Okay, I have actually a question coming in here from a digital world.
Yeah.
It's Sten Lindqvist who is watching this. He has a question about those intersubject parasites, or whatever we call it.
Yeah.
Those events from the outer world that steals the... He says, what happens if too many intersubjective parasites colonize my digital village? What to do?
What to do, yeah? Mm-hmm. Whew. That is something new to me. I've just started, it was a new series this October from Evan McMullen, and I've been thinking every day on it since October. How do I integrate it into my model? You will mention it in the end, but how do we have strategies for this? But I will certainly have that conversation very soon with you, Sten. So how do we handle when bad behavior comes in my village?
Yeah, it could be bad behavior, but as I see it, it could be also things coming in which maybe not have a specific agent, if I understood the question right, but it could be an agent.
A law, an institution, or something doing... I've been a victim of this myself. I lost custody of my daughters. It wasn't one person, it was the system that took them away from me. But the system is part of what we call the egregore. It's a system not designed for pro-social human life. It's a system made up by rules outside our control as individuals. I suffer. My daughters are no longer in my physical village. They're in my mind and somehow, but there's a lot of suffering and trauma in the world because of the systems that navigate the world are not co-playing with a pro-social human society.
I think to respond to the parasite question in respect of this, I think the best question to be asking is how to create a culture that doesn't really allow that to foster as much. And when we see it fostering, how do we go back to the culture? It's that same system that oppressed you is the same capability and power of a system that affords more clear choice, which makes it less possible for the parasites to make the connections and power within the system to overtake it. Well, I think it's a tap on the shoulder, as Buckminster Fuller would say, that if the parasites are increasing, there's something wrong with the system and the culture that allowed them to appear in the first place. And this is really an issue of defining the standard we want to get to, as opposed to trying to stamp out the things we do not want. It's what we do want to replace it that really is where we transcend that conversation, I think.
Yeah. I think it's maybe in my next session we will talk about behavioral patterns and system, how they connect with human society. This is just my first public presentation of this. There's so much to go on this. but this is a thing. I started playing with digital identities a lot during Clubhouse. I made hundreds, this is just a few of them, hundreds of profile pictures, and I came up with a pattern, so that even if I showed up as a pizza slice, people, since I, in the previous episode, had my face on the same background, they still knew it was me. So I can start playing with digital identities in this very funny play. It was a super funny experiment for me.
And you were doing this before the Ukraine war.
Yeah, this is the Swedish colors
Yeah.
I started using. So it's not. So this was spring of 2021, so 1.5 years ago. I started playing with digital profiles and things like that because I wanted to explore how much can I play with this and still be me, and still people recognize me as me online and things like that. So I could play a lot. There's a lot of things you can play with, experiment and things like that. So I will go into the role I mentioned before that, the navigator and the weaver. There's a lot of celebration of the expert in our society, the top person in every field, and we do see it in culture, rock stars, and we see it in sports. We celebrate the top athletes and things like that. And we celebrated top scientists in the Nobel dinner last week. Last week, Saturday, yes. So, and we celebrate the expert everywhere, but we seldom celebrate the generalist and what Angela calls polymaths. She's one of the people who have been done scientific research on generalists, and she calls them polymaths. I have an interview with her, Angela Myers. Costello Myers, yeah. So I will share anyone with you, but we have to start thinking about the role of the expert and the generalist, because the navigator and the weaver are a kind of new generalist that doesn't fit anywhere, but we need them everywhere. No company or no institutions hire a dedicated weaver and navigator today because we don't understand what they do, because we can't really measure it per se. They do things in the background. They're everywhere. The spider in the web in every company is usually someone who keeps everything flowing together. There's not their official title for the role, but suddenly there's a person in many organizations that does this, not on paper, but the organization works because they do it. You can see it flourish because there's a person keeping everything together, or several persons. But that's just inside an organization and the daily things. We need this on a global level, with everything I talked about before, all the resources, all the events, everything, all the knowledge, all the culture. We have to keep that together as well, not just inside a little organization. And that's the role of a societal weaver and navigator. I also started playing with, the term VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. There's a saying, they started in the US, it wasn't some scientists that took it up, but then the army started using it during the Gulf War. We live in a VUCA world, the first Gulf War in the 90s. And then it became a thing. So now we talk about the VUCA world. And if there's a VUCA world, there is someone handling a VUCAnist. So how do you become a crew member of Spaceship Earth? This is my two favorite quotes from Buckminster Fuller, of course. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And my favorite, we are not going to able to operate our Spaceship Earth successfully, nor for much longer, unless we see it as a whole spaceship and our fates are common. It has to be everybody or nobody. And that's, of course, from his book 50 years ago, Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth. That's when I'm Captain Future. I'm a captain on our spaceship that will take us into the future. And I love the word crew. How do you become a crew? Crew is also not just a person, but it's also a verb. It's an activity, to act as a member of a crew. So I came up with this during a follow-up session, the three aspects of being onboarding, to act or process of orienting, training a new crew member. We all know that we do onboarding in many companies today. We have a procedure or a person handling the onboarding and things like that. And a lot of the gaming industry has taken this to heart. A lot of computer games today have a whole process of onboarding. World of Warcraft, one of the best examples. How do you, extremely complex game, but you you onboarded them into it, level after level, hour after hour, day after day. So onboarding is how do we onboard people into becoming a crew member of Spaceship Earth? What does that look like? To crew up, to join other people as the crew of a ship or a plane. To crew up is a verb we can use as well. Or just crew, to act as a member of a crew. What does it entail? Am I the steward or the navigator or the weaver or the caretaker or the mother or the father of this crew? Who am I in this crew? So what is the weaver and the navigator? we jump over. Have any of you not seen Game of Thrones? Shame on. Oh, a lot of free people in the audience here, and you people online.
The choice makers are not war makers.
No. But I took this as an example because it's one of the most watched TV series. Yeah. But in Game of Thrones, they have a role that's only present in this fantasy universe called the Maester. So in every city, town, or keep, there's a old, mostly men in this world because it's built on the old model of a men's society. But the Maester, an old, knowledgeable person that knows a lot about everything, what we will call the weaver and the navigator. But so in this city, there is a person who has this dedicated role in this world. Why don't we have a Maester in where's the Maester in your company? Where's the Maester in Emperor Gage? This has the official title of Maester or Weaver or Navigator and things like that. Where's the Maester of Lund? Someone you can ask anything. Of course, now there's so much, so no single person can know it all. So we have to have a whole staff of Maesters, of course, and you can have them all disconnected, but I think we have to bring them all together. So there's a whole team or a staff of an agent. There's a weaver or a maester office in every city. You can go in there and get help with anything. You don't have to go to a specific place for everything, but because that is how we do it today. I go to the doctor for one thing, I go to my therapist for another thing, and things like that. But we have to have a thing that's understand that it's all connected. If I want help with one thing, it's probably connected to something else. It's a symptom of something else in my life. And if we can get that mindset, then of course, we need every company, every organization, every institution has to get on board to the 17 sustainability goals. It's half time this coming summer. Some cities are coming a long way, Helsingborg and things like that. Halmstad haven't even started yet, my home city. There's nowhere. There's a half-time employee who's going to handle the whole. Still, there's not here in Helsingborg. You come up with like the HB works and everything, and there's like lots of people, and you see the cubes walking into the lobby. I asked around in Halmstad. There's nowhere in Halmstad where you can see the cubes or even a planche. Board, a poster of the 17 SDGs. Nowhere. There's not even. I asked people working with sustainability in Halmstad. They didn't know what a pin was. They didn't know what the 17 SDGs was. So we need this SDG office, this Maester office, this Weaver Navigator office. So this is. I'm the navigator. I'm mostly navigator. And Bertola is mostly the weaver. There's connected roles. But you can emphasize on parts of the role. I'm not so social. I was really shy before I started doing this, but I'm not so shy anymore. So I'm becoming more of a weaver than I was 10 years ago. I didn't know anyone outside my family or workplace. And this is my model for Ikigai 4.0. How do you navigate your own life in this? I mentioned that before. This is a map. How do you map your own path? So that you can put it on paper and have a discussion with someone else. What do I know? What do I need? What do I want? Where am I going? Where have I been? And things like that. There's many models, but I think very few of them is as holistic as it needs to be. There's when you mention Ikigai, they come up with a Venn diagram with 4 questions, and one of them is, what can I get paid for? Bothered me so much, I had to make this model instead. So I call that enablers. There's so much more than just being paid for something to make it happen. You need a network. You need insights, knowledge, time, attention, hub, clusters, resources to make something happen. Because I showed up on a place, hey, I want to work here as Captain Future. I couldn't just get work there because I needed all the rest here. I needed a whole narrative arc, and I needed myself making this presentation eventually for you to keep the story alive about what enables me to work as Captain Future. I couldn't just go apply for a job somewhere. There was no one asking for a Captain Future anywhere. But what is your passion, curiosity, flow? What skills, talents, and competences do you have, and what are you working on? How do you work on wisdom? We touched upon that. I will touch upon it. But what gives meaning to you? What gives you purpose? There's a fantastic quote by Picasso. Your meaning in life is to find out what you're good at, and your purpose is to give it away. So how do I create value for myself and society? And the most important part, where do I train all my skills? Where's my wisdom dojo, my wisdom gym? I go to the regular gym and train my body, but where do I train my brain? Where do I train my understanding of the world? What is value creation? A small question. Every of these questions is, of course, a whole seminar, a week-long seminar, but anyone? I talked to you earlier about it. Anyone else has their personal, not what I think, but what you think?
To keep it simple, anything that extends choice where there wasn't choice before has created value.
Yeah, that's a good question. A little tough. So I mentioned before, society is our way for collective value creation. Society is much more, but it's one of the, without collective value creation, there's no food, there's no clothes, there's no nothing, there's no iPhones. And I mentioned all these questions around money. I'm so bothered with people just saying that it will cost money to do something. There's enough money in the world, we know that by now. There's so fucking much money that we can buy the earth millions times over and everything on it. But still, there's a great visualization. Anyone online or watching this, I will share it in the comments, and that's called visualization of all the money in the world. And it's like, there's so much money in the world that is mind-blowing. So where is it? There is enough money. Why can't we do everything we want with it? Who owns it? Where is it tied up? How is it connected to narratives and things like that? Why can't we give people decent pay even? Why does the electricity bill is so high now? Where's the money? Where does the money go that we pay for electricity? Why can't we get it back and pay for electricity again and again and again? And things like that. And I will touch upon this as well. What is wisdom? And where do we go for wisdom? Okay, yeah, sure.
I've been thinking a lot of this on this. I believe that we had a system where wisdom was hosted by. You have said that there could be different roles in this future village or in the village today, but I guess we had that role, the elderly or the
village elder.
Yeah, that's right. And
the one you went to for question, the maester.
But then when we throw everything away, more or less.
Who's your village elder?
Yeah, that's the problem today.
I have no idea.
No idea. That's super interesting in itself. So, who is?
Was it my parents? No,
who is passing on the wisdom?
It was never my parents. When I was young, I asked my father about everything. When I grew up, it turned out he was just making things up.
This is something also Buckminster.
Yeah.
This is also something Buckminster Fuller talked about. That moment in the 30s or whenever it was that youngsters understood more from the news than they did from their parents is a departure in human culture. You know.
So the evening news is our wisdom elder right now, but and they feed us bullshit.
Again, it's you know what part of that is true, and then you know what part of it trivializes it. The part
And
of
how
it
much is useful?
It's just again more choice, more sources, not simply dependent on what my parents told me. Now, what we do with that tool, and whether we create idiocy or wisdom is still our choice.
Yeah.
But at least we have the opportunity. Is the point that the technology of communications gives us more choice than the culture of just what we were born with.
Yeah. So there's a whole new series by John Verveke that will premiere in January where he explores this further. But there's a fantastic lecture from September in Prague. I will share that in the links as well if you want to know more of this. But this is my narrative around this. We all know our national teams in ice hockey, table tennis, decathlon, and this is esports. It's the Korean team that won the World Championship in League of Legends this year. When they show up in the World Championship or something like that, they represent our nation, they represent our town, they represent our whole region like Europe and things like that. And we expect them to have been training super hard the whole year. We don't expect them to have watched Netflix all day. We expect them to be at the top performance, and they've been to training camps, they've done all kinds of activities to be at the peak performance when they show up to compete or something like that. So there are national teams and athletes and things like that. So we probably have a national team in wisdom and leadership. I would say it's our political leadership or in our industrial leadership, the trade organization, things like that. How did they get selected to be in the national team of wisdom? How often how hard have they trained on wisdom? Do they even know what wisdom is? Who is their coaches and trainers? Who train them? What does their annual training camp look like? And when I say training camp, it's not the practice of their activity. They actually go away for a whole month and train on wisdom. It's unheard of. What I found out when I talked to a lot of political friends here in Sweden is most people have been training on the skills of stepping over other people to make themselves. So the people who is in the top of the political leadership that spent 20 years training on how to take to the skill of climbing to the top. So when they are on the top, all they know is how to climb. They haven't trained of the actual skills they need when they get to the top. They know how to debate, they know how to shoot others down, they know how to get their will through, they know how to make a decision, they know how to make a budget. They have no idea what it is to lead a civilization. And we can see that we just laugh at them when they on TV today. When they stand there and says the thing that we should do when we get the power, and then we laugh at them when they get the power because it turns out that it didn't work and things like that. So wisdom is multi-perspective, it's insights, it's comprehension, it's experience, it's caring and kindness. Foremost, we care. We have to care for each other and our home planet. And it's courage, it's curiosity, and it's also playful and silliness. This is wisdom, I would say. This is mostly from John Verveke and others people I found. This is a complex skill put together of this and other things as well. And we started experimenting with an exercise called Wisdom Gym called Glassbeat Games. We turn up on Zoom every Sunday. We stay for 1 or 2 hours, and we do an exercise in collective sense-making and meaning-making. We go out in the breakout room of 3 people. We do 1 minute each for 4 or 5 turns. And when we speak what comes to mind, I will gladly showcase this for you. Some of you have been in it, Stellan, and you've been in it, Daniel. You've been in our Glassbeat, yeah. So this is a fantastic exercise for you train one aspect of the perspective and insight muscle. Not every part of the wisdom skills, but some part of the wisdom skills. You can actually show up in a wisdom gym and train every week. Just like you do to the regular gym to lift or do spinning, I do body balance, I do Tabata, I do cross mix, I do core and group exercises with my body every week, and I do this as well every week. I haven't missed a week in 2.5 years. The playground is I will jump over that. And this is where I talked about the SDG cubes. This is Helsingborg and this is Almedalen. So this is a narrative that we can use when we talk about the enablification. What is it that unites us? This is a very not the best tool to make a global conversation or what we should do, but the only global tool that most countries and everyone has agreed upon. And still we're not on track on doing what we committed to do in this aspect. And most people don't understand how it all fits together. And this is the method called Learning Society, Listen, Link and Learn, that Batola and Christian Meyen worked with in Trondheim city. So it's another aspect, it's another angle of our method. In our method, this is a small part, but in their method, our model is another small part. So this is a part of our model is a small part of their model, but in our model, their model is a small part of ours. And that's how we have, like I said in the beginning, we can't just use one model and one map. We have to understand we take two different models, and somewhere they connect. Of course, they connect much deeper, but on paper, they're connecting at least 1 or 2 or 3 sharing points. And when you work with 2 models at the same time from different perspectives, then we're onto something. Because if we just use one model, that's not going to work. SDGs is one model, but you have a lot of other models that connect to them in other ways and things like that. And then he came up with this, Christian Meyen. So I pick 2 goals. It doesn't have to be for SDGs. I think this is this is what I want to develop talents from. This is what my journey or path is about. And this is my map, my current map. They can change from day to day, to week, to year to year. But this is the models and the maps I use to go to this. So I picked my goals, partnership, global collaboration, and wisdom and lifelong learning. I include in this. And this is some of the models and maps I use to navigate in this. But the thing that I think is so beautiful, this is a visual presentation of who I am, what I do. So you can put it on your banner on Facebook or LinkedIn, like I have done. So it's a fantastic tool called a charter that everyone can make one and play with it. And I like colors. We took the colorfulness of the original goals and we played with colors in our charter as well. So. And this is a model I came across just this fall about the learning universe. I just want to include it. It is just the physical space, the biological space, the mind space, and the culture space, and the little science space. So it maps. It's another way to map and see things. So it's important to understand that how the models overlap and map things when you play with your own model, so you don't get stuck in my one model. And this is the development goals that you launched this year. And yesterday they launched the tools. I have screenshots to that. There's a video on YouTube. I just mentioned it here because it's another way. I won't go into it, but it's a deep way to go into this. So before all this started, I asked myself the question, what is the entire human endeavor and how do we navigate and weave it together? Because that's what I started with before I made all these models. And I put it down in 12 categories that didn't connect together, and I made a YouTube video that I got 0 feedback on and things like that. So that's why I made this model instead, to understand this question. And of course, this October we came into Evan's super fascinating way. Where does all bad human behavior come from during the last, say, 40,000 years? It started very long time ago. And we can all see, like every 5-year-old can see when a human adult does something bad, hurt someone, talk someone down. Is it just the individual, or is it behavioral patterns that has become a parasite of our cognitive noosphere, what is called the intersubjective sphere? So the real sign is every ecosystem on Earth has a niche for parasites and symbiotes. And most of them are populated by symbiotes and parasites. A symbiote is someone that gives and takes something, and a parasite is an organism that only takes. Yeah, this is the last slide. But every ecosystem has a niche for parasites and symbiotes, and our cognitive sphere, our intersubjective sphere of human minds, is this ecosystem. So there's a niche for behavioral parasites in this, he argues, and he has a fantastic series where he makes sense of this. And this is something I want to explore. This is what I will explore this decade as well, because we can see it everywhere, from Russia, from US, everywhere, especially in our leadership. There's so much bad behavior, and we just let it go. In a small hunter-gatherer tribe, someone being bad, the grandmother, the village elder would take them in the ear and said, "You stop that right now. No more of that." But in today's society, everyone gets away with it. So this is the maps I've been through. This is for people online who want to take a screenshot. I won't read it now, because this is the last slide, and we're done.
Oh, super. Can you go back one slide?
Yeah?
Can you go back one slide and just leave it up for like 10 seconds so it's possible to do a screenshot?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Michael. We have had a fantastic, I would say, more than 1.5 hours of intense knowledge, wisdom, mapping up, stuff like that. And I would say thank you, not only for the inspiration you have given us, but for the extreme work you have done the last 10 years, which have enabled such an inspirational speech, and also all the knowledge that is on this presentation, and everything inside you, and how can we share it to each other. That's definitely an endeavor we all need to step up in. And thank you very much for this today. We have had a fantastic...
I'm on camera somewhere.
Yeah, you are. It's over there, so it's filming us all together here.
Yeah.
And what I would like to say is not only thank you, but let's co-create the future together.
Yeah.
I will give you now a small document that we have prepared.
It's your map.
Yeah, the map right now, and it's changing all the time. It's called Empregage Being. It's the way we work with empathy, proactivity, engagement to be able to work what is best for the world. So thank you very much, and thanks everyone for joining us, and please keep up the good work, Michael. Thank you.
Decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. It creates a new world to mind a shift, intentionality, perceptuality, conceptuality. We are choosing to shift our mind to best for the world, best for our world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional.